Since I last did my Great League 101 guide, there have been tons of updates to Pokemon Go. Most notably, the addition of Power Up Punch onto Medicham, completely changing how the Great League functions. Well, I have updated my Great League content, so up ahead is a clip from my live stream SwagTips where I spell out how the Great League goes nowadays from May 2019 in Pokemon Go. For today's live stream, we're talking about the Season 1 regional meta, which is basically the same thing as the Great League meta. And I've been wanting to update my Great League content, so this is just a wonderful time. The Season 1 regional meta is exactly the same as the Great League meta, so there's no real difference. The thing with the Season 1 regional meta is that it uses all the Pokemon types from all the Silph Arena Cups that have happened, which is literally every Pokemon type except for normal, water, and grass. All the better water and grass type Pokemon are like dual type anyways, so we're not really missing them. I guess we missed out on Ludicolo. And Meganium. Meganium's pretty big. Blastoise. I think Blastoise isn't as hot as he used to be now that the meta's been like figured out more. I think Azumarill is just always the better Blastoise, so not really missing out on Blastoise. And then as far as the normal type goes, I know a lot of people like Munchlax. I don't think Munchlax is that great. And Vigoroth has some swag, but at the end of the day, it's pretty as well. So normal types really don't have that much impact. This is basically the Great League. And then you can just put Meganium in with the grass types here, and there you go. Nothing too crazy. And yeah, when I get to the grass types, when I'm going through all this with you guys, I'll give a shout to Meganium, even though it's not part of the regionals. And if you guys are wondering what Silph Arena regionals are, Silph Arena is like, you know, the independent tournaments with the leaderboard and stuff like that. And if you get enough points from their cups, then you get invited to regionals. And if you can make it to regionals, then you can participate in regionals, and that's more points or something for the leaderboard. I don't know. To be honest, I have a hard enough time keeping up with everything else in Pokemon Go and work, just PvP in general. So I haven't really looked too closely at how Silph functions with all this. I can just give you guys the picks. And as usual, this nice, lovely graphic here. Ryan Swag does not have graphic design skills. Yeah, I don't have the graphic design skills of Lorma96. This is by Lorma96 from the Game Press crew. Simulation data from Go Battle Sim. And all the data and all the research and all the making this was exclusively Lorma. I didn't help Lorma with any of this. So just kind of running on Lorma's coattails here. Good thing. Got permission from Lorma, and we're both part of the Game Press team, so allows me to be lazy. From what light research I've been doing on the Great League in general, with my desire to update my Great League content, basically agrees with everything I was seeing, with a couple of additions that I didn't really think of, primarily seen in the wildcards here, which pretty interesting. If you do want to be competitive with Pokemon Go Great League meta, there's one thing that you need to know. Medicham is insane. Medicham is so crazy good, I can't even put into words other than saying that it's insane, right? And before doing the live stream, I was like kind of scripting out everything I wanted to say. The Medicham section just got to be a bit too extensive. So I think I'll do a separate video covering exactly why Medicham is just like a PvP god in more detail. But the TLDR is that it has counter, which is extremely good in terms of damage and energy gains. You have Psycho Cut, which has good counter coverage actually, and is also really crazy with the energy gains. You do trade some damage though. And then you've got Power Up Punch, which is like just kind of broken, to be honest. With the speed and power coming from Medicham too, it's even better. And then you've got it backed up with Ice Punch. So Altaria, you see how it's flying away here, right? It's not just how the graphic was made. Altaria is afraid of the Ice Punch that Medicham has. Kind of brings the whole package together. And if you want to, you could maybe go with Psychic. It would probably throw off some of its better counters. They're like, yeah, it's got Ice Punch. And then they get hit with Psychic. That would be pretty ridiculous. So Medicham, just a constant threat. It can utilize any of its moves except for Dynamic Punch because Power Up Punch is way better. So it's just a complete package Pokemon. If you don't stop Medicham right away, it'll probably steamroll most of your team through the power of Power Up Punch and counter. Or even Psycho Cut if you let it get that crazy. So Medicham, definitely something you want on your team. And if you are curious about like, oh, Ryan Swag, I gotta max it out and get the lucky so I have the highest IV and it's such a steep investment, I think Medicham is one of the few Pokemon that it'll take like a new generation of Pokemon basically to power creep on it in any way. And no, I don't know what Pokemon specifically will power creep on it, or even if Medicham will be power crept in Gen 5, but it's going to be a hot while before Medicham is bad. To make Medicham bad, not only would the meta have to be slightly like structured differently, like for Medicham to be bad, first Bastidon would have to be bad. That would have to be a thing that happens. And then they'd have to like nerf multiple aspects of Medicham while buffing multiple aspects of its counters. Medicham might not be here forever, but for the time being, Medicham is definitely like a must-have Great League PvP Pokemon by far. So I stan the Medicham to the max. Of course, Medicham has vulnerabilities, primarily the Azumarill, and then also the flying types. The flying types have to be wary of Medicham because, you know, Ice Punch definitely creams Altaria, and then the power-up punches and counter damage. So power-up punches with counter damage are things that Skarmory does not appreciate, so it's kind of dicey. Like, these guys are kind of almost on an even playing field, flying types carrying the advantage, but Azumarill kind of straight bodies the Medicham, more or less. Then there are other counters on the side here. You got the Ghost types that help out against Medicham, and you got the Poison types that also help out against Medicham. And then when I get to those guys, I'll go over them in a little bit more detail. Medicham, must-have option, and another must-have option is Azumarill. No getting around that too. So when PvP first came out, Azumarill was crazy good because it had all these advantages against Altaria. It's a fairy type, so the dragon type attacks, it resists them like doubly. Fairy type is just that good against dragons. But one thing that was kind of slowing Azumarill's role was the powerful Thundershock Thunderbolt users. But then John Hankey, Thanos snapped them out of existence, nerfed the heck out of Thunderbolt. It's kind of an interesting comparison, this graphic to my original graphic from like months back. Electric types are basically non-existent aside from Lantern. And Lantern's like doing a whole bunch of other stuff to stay in the game. So just kind of an interesting thing, just changing the energy cost of a charge move just completely wipes out the viability for a lot of Pokemon. So that's just how easy like buffs and nerfs can shape PvP. Without the electric types really posing a threat, Azumarill has really flourished in the meta and is absolutely a must-have pick. Like, there's no real getting around Azumarill, to be honest. So if you are dedicated to PvP, we'll start working on the lucky trade for your Azumarill too, because that's another Pokemon that you basically have to max out in order to get the max potential out of the Azumarill. Added bonus, if you get the lucky trade in the baby form of Azumarill, that has a lower cost to unlock the third move. Kind of sneak it in the beginning. But if you already have a maxed out Azumarill with good IVs, well then you may as well unlock the third one. Just eat the extra cost. The final staple in the paper that is your Great League team. If you were to pick like 3 MVPs, which one would it be? You might be thinking Altaria. Psych. It's actually Skarmory. So when PvP first came out in the Great League, these two were always kind of neck and neck for viability. Altaria being able to just womp on everything, Skarmory having similar roles to Altaria while also carrying a slight advantage over Altaria. Well, now that we're at the end game here, electric types have been wiped out of existence. I think that's actually a lot to do with it. Skarmory takes to the skies and is slightly better than the Altaria. The main claim for fame, especially in the Season 1 regionals here for the Silpharina, the Azumarill here. Azumarill is such an important pick. Yes, Skarmory has a losing matchup to Azumarill, but Skarmory's fast move is neutral, and Skarmory doesn't take super effective damage from any of Azumarill's charge moves, which are things that happen to Altaria. So I think that's really like the final like nail in the coffin as far as which one of the flying types is the better flying type, because they both do have the same role of just beating Medicham. If Medicham doesn't get the one over on them, of course, because Ice Punch, Power Up Punch, counter, really aggressive. The Skarmory, slightly better. You got Matthew Shafik here. Apparently he won his regionals in London, 54 players. And he was telling me about his team composition here. We can go to it. And he was telling me that a lot of his battles, he just used Medicham, Azumarill, and Skarmory. He really didn't have to use anything but that core of 3 Pokemon, and a lot of people just couldn't handle that. And you will see here from all these other teams that are featured, a lot of them really don't break the mold from the main picks that Lorma has here. You see the 5 groups in just about every single team, or 4 of the groups, and then 2 of the alternative picks. So I think it really goes without saying that those 3 Pokemon are basically almighty. And then as far as your general team composition goes, if you want to have a staple group of PvP Pokemon, well then aside from those 3, you're going to want to start dipping into the other picks in this group. Now, to be fair to Altaria, Altaria isn't non-viable. Altaria is still crazy strong, and you can always have Skarmory and Altaria in the same team. In fact, you don't, I guess, need Skarmory, to be honest. If you feel like you've got Azumarill handled enough, you could just go with the Altaria. The benefit of the Altaria is that it does have more aggressive damage than Skarmory does, and it has a different set of resistances, so that can make the difference in a lot of matchups. Yeah, Altaria is not dead. In a vacuum, I'd say Altaria is definitely like a top 3 pick, but when you have the context of the Pokemon Go meta, it starts to sink a little bit. Just things are too aggressive against it. Azumarill beats it. Medicham has Ice Punch, so it's kind of a scary matchup, even though it beats it. Steel types wail on both of them anyways, so whatever. And then Skarmory has a slight advantage over it, so it's just the deck is stacked against it, despite it being so insanely powerful. Then moving on down, we have the steel types. And when I say steel types, I'm mostly talking about Bastidon here. Featured is Melmetal and Bastidon, but we all know who the dad is. It's the same thing as in the Kingdom Cup. Bastidon, way better than Melmetal. Melmetal does have a slightly different role than Bastidon. It does have faster charge move use, so it is a bit more aggressive, and that can allow it to overcome some matchups that Bastidon might struggle with. But at the end of the day, in a vacuum, but not even in a vacuum, in most battles in general, Bastidon is going to be the better pick. Now, I guess cutting back to Matt, the master here, he used both. But if you look down the line, a lot of the topping players are just straight up using Bastidon. The Silent Rhetoric went with Melmetal, but if this is them ranked by points, I don't know if it is or not. I guess that did get him 4th, but you'll see that Bastidon is basically included just about everywhere. And where there isn't Bastidon, there's Melmetal. But then you got the Master, and you use Bastidon and Melmetal, so how about that? So if you are going into the Season 1 Regionals, I think Bastidon is basically a must-have pick for your team. And if you are super competitive in PvP Great League right now, then Bastidon would be a worthy investment. Now when it comes to Bastidon and Melmetal going forward, if you aren't in the Season 1 Regionals and you don't have a Bastidon powered up and unlock the second move and all that, and same thing with Melmetal. Melmetal is like a crazy huge investment for Great League, so I can understand why you wouldn't. The future is coming, and the future is Probopass. We don't know when he's coming out, but there has been like a data mine about these lures that attract certain types of Pokemon, and then that might tie in with the evolution of some of the Gen 4 Pokemon we don't have, including Probopass. And Probopass is basically better than both of them. Probopass is like you took Melmetal and you combined it with Bastidon. Like you took the best parts and made one Pokemon that's just better than both of them. And then better yet, Probopass, it's way easier to get the nose passes. I don't know about you guys, but I'm like overloaded on nose passes as is. For the second charge move, way cheaper than Bastidon, and definitely way cheaper than Melmetal. So the future is coming. If you haven't gotten either of these guys yet and you're not involved with the regionals, I think you can wait for the Probopass. If you are involved with the regionals and you don't have one of these two guys yet, you might want to, I don't know, who knows when the update's dropping, and you might want to hold out for the Probopass, but you know, if you're getting a little bit too close and you want to top in the regional or something like that, well then I guess you have to give the Stardust Goblin that is the Silpharina. Got to give him his due and get the Bastidon here. So if you're curious about Probopass, I am planning on making some light content about it in the future. Maybe once the update finally drops. But yeah, it's got Spark, it's got Rock Slide, it's got Magnet Bomb, it's got Thunderbolt. Like what more do you need to know? It's Steel Rock type. So it's like everything these guys are, but better. Now you guys might be sitting here thinking, Ryan Swag, where's Steelix? Like, you guys know I stand the Steelix, but I gotta tell you, Steelix isn't so hot in this meta. Cool thing that Steelix does do is it beats these guys, generally, and it still shuts down the flying types, but Steelix struggles against the grass types, and Steelix, it's kind of a dicey matchup against the Azumarill, so like it is as dicey as ever. I'd say the main thing holding it back though is the grass types. I guess if you are going to the Season 1 Regionals, or if you like participating in the Great League in general, and you don't want to pay the Stardust Goblin, you could always go with Steelix. I think Steelix is a pretty solid alternative option. Lorma doesn't stand the Steelix, and looking over a lot of the matchup data from regionals, a lot of people aren't using Steelix. So I'm not like entirely sure why, because Steelix has a lot of the same matchups as these guys. The main thing I can think of is struggling against the grass types. That's something that Steelix isn't very fond of. But aside from that, Steelix can beat these guys, still fulfills the flying type counter role, and is still an awkward thing for Azumarill to deal with. So I think Steelix is fine. But people that know better than me are definitely repping these guys over the Steelix. So I think that definitely speaks volumes. And then moving on up, we got the grass type Pokemon. And yeah, for people that are just interested in the general Great League, you'll notice that Meganium isn't here. Meganium's extremely good. And Meganium's got Earthquake, so it can bite back on these steel types here, which is awesome. But in the Season 1 Sylph Arena Regionals, grass types aren't included. So Tropius and Venusaur are in because they're dual type Pokemon. They got the poison and the flying subtypings. Meganium's just too pure. And I'm positive if Meganium was allowed into this club, it would be a top pick as well. Doing basically the same job that these guys are, while also shutting down these guys. Keep that in mind if you got a Meganium and you're just doing general Great League battles. But if you are in the Season 1 Regionals for the Sylph Arena, why are you watching this video? You should have this figured out already, right? But you can't use Meganium, so that sucks. Between the Tropius and the Venusaur, they do have slight advantages over each other. The main thing is Tropius generally beats Venusaur, right? And it's got the aggressive Razor Leaf damage. On the other hand, Venusaur does have the poison type extra option there, which would definitely hurt the Tropius and gives Venusaur a little bit more variety there, especially when you consider the poison type Pokemon. You'll be getting some resistance here, so you won't go down as quickly against them as Tropius might. So at the end of the day, I feel like they're interchangeable. And then looking at the matchup data that Matt sent me there, yeah, it definitely seems like teams are using one or the other. Fortunately, for many players, you don't have a choice. You just have Venusaur. So basically settles it for you there. When it comes to Venusaur, Venusaur has both Vine Whip and Razor Leaf, so there is a little debate. Which move do I want to go with? I'm in favor of the Vine Whip because it's got really good damage and really good energy gains. It's basically like counter. Razor Leaf is a worthy consideration because it is just such a heavy, damaging, just flat, I mow you down type of attack. So either move, definitely worth putting on your radar there. So that covers the general picks here, but there are alternative wild card picks that you might want to keep in the back of your mind. So starting out, we got Lantern. Lantern is the sole survivor of the electric type clan. Back in the day, before Thunderbolt was nerfed, Lantern was one of the better electric types then. And the reason why was because of its defensive typing, being a water electric type Pokemon, and then being bulky. So being bulky and being water definitely played in Lantern's favor, and it allowed it to survive the apocalypse that happened to Thunderbolt. So Lantern in performance is going to fill a similar role to Melmetal, and it does have an advantage against the Bastidon because you do carry water type attacks. Big change though is that the grass types are gonna womp you down. Change of hands going even further, you have an improved matchup against Azumarill. So you gotta take the good with the bad. Do you want a Melmetal that does just abysmal against grass types but beats Azumarill here? Could be worth considering. Another detriment to the Lantern is that it does have a bad matchup against Altaria, but as I mentioned earlier on, Skarmory is the better Altaria right now, so you might not be seeing as many Altarias as you would have earlier on in Pokemon Go PvP. It might just be Skarmories, and if they are Skarmories, well, Lantern is going to have a field day. Then moving on down, we've got the Mud Boys here. Yeah, the Water Grounds, all using Mud Shot. So definitely all very powerful in PvP yet. One thing that kind of holds them back a little bit is electric types are no longer around. So they no longer have that, like, I hit the thing fast that hits the other things fast, but still very worthy. I mean, the steel types absolutely do not want to deal with these guys, but they are absolutely dealt with by the grass types. And then when it comes to Medicham's rise in power, previous to Power Up Punch, they were kind of on equal footing. Medicham just had a slight advantage because of counter being so good. But with Power Up Punch, it's kind of hard for these guys to deal with Medicham, all things being equal. That said, Mud Shot, really nice. Mud Bomb comes quick, hits hard. Earthquake hits like Omega hard. So these guys are definitely not bad. If you do have a mud type Pokemon in your roster, the time you'd really want to bring them out is if you see no grass type Pokemon. Like no grass type Pokemon, that's like your free ticket to just whip in one of these guys and have a good time. Now as far as which one you want to rope in, I really don't feel the Swampert line. Yeah, Marshtomp and Swampert I feel are kind of lesser versions of the Quagsire and the Daddy Cash over here. In the Boulder Cup, Swampert and Marshtomp did have some swag. In the context of this meta, I feel like the water type coverage really isn't doing a whole lot for them, where these guys are using ground, Ice, and Rock type coverage to get the one over on their opponents. So I feel like Wishcash and the SwagTips over here, definitely the better meta picks. I'm not saying that these guys are bad. Maybe when Swampert gets Hydro Cannon, it'll like explode in usage and power. But right now, it's not that hot. And then the main difference between the Quagsire and the Daddy Cash has Mud Bomb, so it's a lighter hit, but it comes extremely fast, so it can let you close out some fights. Could help you defeat a weakened Medicham before it ruins your life. When it comes to the Quagsire, you got the Earthquake. And the Earthquake is just the equalizer. I mean, back when PvP first came out, I was using Earthquake Fortress to mow things down. This is like the better Earthquake Fortress, right? So yeah, just blasting things with Earthquake. And then you've got Stone Edge versus Blizzard. Stone Edge comes quicker, Blizzard hits harder, Blizzard has better coverage. Stone Edge still gets the job done and hits faster. So I think it really comes down to the player and your team comp and what you want these Pokemon to handle and how you want them to handle them. That'll determine which one of the two you want to use. You also have Acid Spray to consider, but I think overall at the end of the day, I think Quagsire is going to be doing a lot better with dual damage coverage moves. I think that's going to be Quagsire's main claim to fame here. Could opt for the Acid Spray though. It could be a cheeky like haha kind of thing. Like if Quagsire can come in and counter these guys with like mud shot damage, I don't know. Like thinking about it logistically, it just feels kind of awkward. So if you find a way to squeeze in Acid Spray on your Quagsire and use it effectively, definitely let me know about it because, I mean, it is a spicy move. But at the end of the day, it's just too soft, too slow, it's awkward. We got the Ghost type Pokemon here. One tricky Pokemon that has always been kind of in the background. The cups haven't really been working out for it. Like, you know, the way things have been lining up. Haunter, man. Haunter is kind of like a weird little cheat code to this meta. It's got the Shadow Claw, so, you know, rapid energy gains. It's got Sludge Bomb. So with the Ghost and the Poison typing, the Poison typing gives you resistance to Grass, which is nice. The Poison typing gives you resistance to Fairy, which is nice. And then the Sludge Bomb just deletes this guy. And because you're a Ghost Poison type Pokemon, you have a triple resistance to the fighting type damage coming from the Medicham, which is awesome. So if it's not a Psycho Cut Medicham, you're pretty good. You're pretty good, Haunter. You're pretty good. I've seen a lot of people have been using it, and the standard meta right now, a lot of people are using the counter Medicham still. They haven't, they're not going with the Psycho Cut. So I think this is definitely an interesting inclusion to teams. The thing that really stands out with it, though, is its ability to just wall these two guys. So really awesome inclusion. We got Sableye, and Sableye has some swag here, yeah. So when it comes to the Nightmare Cup, the current cup that's in season right now for the Silpharina, they banned Sableye because Sableye was too good apparently. And because of that, Spiritomb, which is like weaker Sableye, is one of the top picks for that particular cup. And I guess Silpharina was like, well, we want people to save on Stardust because you'd have to max out the Sableye. But how are people saving on Stardust if you're kind of making them, you're not actually making them, but, you know, incentivizing them, powering up Spiritomb when Spiritomb's like worse Sableye. So I think that whole thing is just awkward. Glad that I don't have to deal with any of that. But Sableye, really good, really quick. Shadow Claw and Foul Play, so really fast Dark Charge move activation, just completely shreds the Medicham here, which is awesome. It has pretty good neutral matchups against just about everything. Problem with Sableye though is that sometimes its hits are a little bit too soft, and then sometimes its bulk doesn't really hold out. When it comes to PvP, being fast and good and having good stats, all of that is awesome, but if you don't have good resistances and your coverage isn't super relevant, then that's like ways that you kind of start to fall behind. So I think at the end of the day, Sableye is definitely a strong pick to include for your team, but it's definitely more of a side wildcard pick rather than being part of the main crew here. Then we got the more flavored ghost types. We got the ice one and we got the fire one. You know, Alola Marowak, we got the Frostlass. I don't believe in these guys. I really don't. A lot of people want to talk about them. Frostlass is pretty good at putting shield pressure on, and then it's got Avalanche, which is really powerful, and it's got Shadow Ball, which is really powerful. But at the end of the day, I just don't really see it making it. I think it's just like, you know, too frail, and I think the meta is just too against it in a way. I don't know, I just don't really feel the Frostlass. Alola Marowak, I've always kind of felt was just a bit too slow and awkward to really stand out. Of course, its Shadow Ball is awesome, and Alola Marowak's resistances give it like full resistances to the Medicham that's not using Psychic type attacks, which is awesome. but I don't really see it standing out in that big of a way. So if you are considering a ghost for your team, I think Haunter is the best budget pick. Evolve Ghastly and you're basically there. So definitely a solid Pokemon to consider. If you want to put in the huge investment for a little bit of extra speed and finesse, maybe some future proofing, since Sableye will probably be a good Pokemon for some time to come here, you can go for the Sableye. But when it comes to these two guys, I think you might have some team comp specific stuff going on if you want to work them in. But I'm really not feeling these two. Moving on down, we got the poison types. And I feel like the poison types are kind of like the hidden masters of the meta in a way. They're just kind of lurking in the back, waiting for their opportunity to strike. Basically, thing that keeps these guys down, steel types, not a very good matchup for them. And then you got the mud Pokemon up here, which just delete these guys entirely. In the absence of the mud Pokemon, I guess in reference to the steel types maybe being there, maybe not being there, I think these guys are really good. Tentacruel still has the same swag that it had in the Twilight Cup, where it has that insane nuke damage from its charge move, and now it has some extra finesse with Acid Spray. Tentacruel here is one of the few Pokemon that I feel is like really viable with the Acid Spray because it is Tentacruel's earliest attack. Out of all of its charge moves, it can get Acid Spray off the soonest, which is nice. And its poison jab damage is also pretty good too, cutting through, some of the grass type Pokemon pretty quickly. Azumarill also really does not want to deal with that kind of attack right there. And then Tentacruel resisting everything that isn't psychic coming from the Medicham. More reasons to use Tentacruel, yeah. So I feel like Tentacruel is more viable here than it was in the Twilight Cup, and then with the inclusion of Acid Spray, it's more viable now than it was then in Great League meta and the S1 regional meta in general. Another cool thing working out for it is Meganium's not here with the Earthquake, ruining its life. Now, you don't have to use Acid Spray with Tentacruel. You could go for double coverage, and double coverage means you can nuke more things because you got a wider variety of nukes. You have twice the nukes, actually. If your opponent's turned up to that, then they'll just know to keep shields. Where if you have Acid Spray, then Acid Spray is like, oh, they might hit me with that weak attack that I don't want to shield. So you can play some mind games that way. I'm in bigger favor of the mind games, but if you just want to play it straight and nuke things with your Tentacruel, you can go for double nukes. And as far as the charge moves go, I feel like Hydro Pump is definitely like a strong, I wouldn't say must-have, but desire over the Blizzard. And then Blizzard can also be considered. If you're going for double nukes though, I think Sludge Wave needs to happen because Sludge Wave is a bit earlier, and then just that poison type coverage helps seal the deal in some matchups. Acid Spray would also kind of be helping out with because of the poison jab damage. Then we got the Muck. And the Muck is pretty awesome. One of my patrons, Anzu, actually had some pretty solid success using Muck in their regional team. Basically, what he was saying is if you didn't see Mud, then it was time to bring out the Muck. And Muck is just solid. It's got the Thunder Punch now, so it's got some coverage on some of the flying types, more coverage to have on the Azumarill with an earlier hitting charge move. You got the Acid Spray to get that finesse in. So I think overall Muck has a pretty complete kit here. Very solid tanky Pokemon. Doesn't care about fighting type hits that much. And definitely worth considering for your roster. And then finally we got the Beedrill. And Beedrill is kind of like how I feel about Frostlass and Alola Marowak. It's good. It has its uses. It has some pretty interesting resistances, but I don't stan it as much. But I see its swag. And its swag is that, it's got the poison jab, takes care of Azumarill, like the other poison types do, and then it also has doubled resistances to the grass type damage, which is also pretty awesome. And then with bug and poison, you do get a double resistance to the fighting type damage. Now, I don't feel like Beedrill really has a whole lot to retaliate against Medicham here. So that's the thing that's kind of, making me feel a little bit awkward about it. But it is overall pretty powerful. You might want to look into it a little bit more. I can tell you, I haven't really looked into it too much myself. A couple random sims, and I was like, what is going on with the Beedrill? And I'm like, yep, deletes this. Not entirely the best against the Medicham here. Now, one thing that's also worth noting for ghost types and for the poison types here is a lot of their advantage is contingent on the Medicham not doing anything psychic. Because the moment psychic is brought in or Psycho Cut is brought in, well, now their viability starts to diminish because now they're getting hit with super effective damage. So that's or neutral in the case of some of the ghosts, except for Sableye. So the psychic coverage is something that can work against them pretty easily. The counter damage for Medicham is always going to be the more consistent pick. You will see way more victory with the counter. Going in with the Spice with the Psycho Cut can definitely throw some people off. So keep that in the back of your mind. Team building, and then also Medicham building. As far as which one is the better attack, I really can't tell you conclusively. King Ive has like a 40-minute video or something on the topic that might be worth checking out sometime. Aside from that, you might want to run your own sims on PvPoke. Pretty easy to break stuff down there. So, and then finally, we got the Psychic type Pokemon. We got Gallade and Bronzong, Fighting Man, and the Billadoom. So just like in the Nightmare Cup, I didn't talk about Gallade in the Nightmare Cup because I don't really feel it in the Nightmare Cup that much. But if you read Lorma's article on it, Gallade is a pretty strong generalist. So it's able to handle a lot of things pretty well. It's got Leaf Blade, so it's got some nice neutral coverage, early charge move going on there. And then it's got Close Combat. So it's got a fighting type, nuke type attack. You can just keep in the back of your mind and keep on the back of your opponent's mind when they're deciding to shield or not. So Gallade has some pretty serious swag there. Overall, I'm not feeling super hot on the Gallade though. It's up to you if you want to bring in the Gallade or not. Azumarill, kind of having a rough time. With Confusion spam in general. Altaria, not having a good time. And then with the Close Combat, the Steel types have to be wary. They carry like kind of a general advantage over you, but the fights will generally be kind of drawn out, which will give you opportunities to sneak in that nuke to just crush their face. Gallade, not exactly a small brain. And then when it comes to Medicham, counter, Psycho Cut, whatever, Gallade doesn't really care that much and is blasting Medicham with a neutral Confusion. Medicham is fighting Psychic, so neutral damage, not super effective, kind of an even matchup. But Gallade kind of has a slight advantage. But Medicham also has Power Up Punch. So not exactly supremely in Gallade's favor, but the main thing I'm trying to get across is Gallade ain't no chump against the Medicham. Could be worth considering for your team. Think about what Gallade's going to help you out against before really including it. It's a general pick, but being a general pick doesn't mean you're exactly a powerful, provocative, good pick. Then we got Bronzong. Bronzong's function here is kind of reminiscent of how it was in the Kingdom Cup. So in the Kingdom Cup, you had Lucario and Bastidon. So like the same double trouble combo that you got going on here, but with Medicham, because Medicham is like a million times better than Lucario is ever going to be in the Great League. Same combo, right? And there are solutions to this combo, which, you know, got two solutions to Medicham here, and Medicham already beats that, and got all these other counter guys going on. But when it comes to Bronzong, Bronzong has that same kind of role as Bastidon, but counters stuff that thinks it's going to have a good time against the Bastidon. I think that's like the main thing that you want to consider with the Bronzong. So people trying to break up this core, trying to break up this group, are they going to break past the Bronzong? I mean, the standard moveset for Azumarill is Bubble with Ice Beam and Play Rough. What does that do to Bronzong? And what's Bronzong gonna do to Azumarill? The grass types, they ain't doing anything to Bronzong. Bronzong says no. And these guys? Yeah. Didn't think so. Bronzong, definitely solid. If you want a Confusion spammer, I'd say I'd stand this guy a little bit more than the Gallade. Gallade, a little bit too flaky, but Bronzong is like, I confuse with my blast. Psychic. Bronzong. That was a clip from my live stream SwagTips. SwagTips streams every Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Time on the Twitch channel SwagTips. If you like this content, you want to see more like it, well, then make sure to subscribe to SwagTips. If you got any questions on this content, comment below, let me know what's up. I'll be happy to help you out. SwagTips. And I'd like to give a special shout out to these Patreon supporters. If you're not familiar, Ryan Swag has a video editor to help keep the content flowing on the SwagTips, and to help pay for this video editor, I have a patron. So if you'd like to help out, link in the description to the Patreon. Good news, guys! So since first doing this live stream, Probopass has been added to the game. So yeah, we now have a cheap, arguably more efficient alternative to Melmetal and Bastidon. You just gotta use Spark with the Rock Slide, with the Thunderbolt, and you're pretty much set. You can swap out either of the two charge moves for Magnet Bomb if you want to have an improved matchup in the mirror or an improved matchup against Bastidon. So that's also something that you could consider. As far as SmackDown goes, I said it in my other video, we're all about Spark here. Team Instinct swag. And if you're curious about Earth Power, I don't think Earth Power really makes any of the receiving Pokemon like generally meta viable. They'll make a stronger showing in specific Sylph Cups, but overall, I don't think Earth Power has enough chutzpah for the receiving Pokemon to become general threats in the Great League. So that's how I feel about it right now. And the new Pokemon, other than Probopass, maybe Magnezone, but the rest don't appear to be making much of a showing right now. So